Hello and good afternoon. What I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Around the World with Envoy, Global Trends. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday afternoon and for our final live webinar of August. Just a quick reminder to all of those in attendance that today's session will last for about 45 minutes, and that includes a dedicated question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please type that question in the GoToWebinar control box that you should see on the right-hand side of your screen. Type that question in and we'll get to it at the end of the main presentation. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded and we will send a link to download the recording after today's live session. You'll also receive a link to download the slide deck, and you'll even receive the continuing education credits for SHRM and HRCI in that email. If you don't see it, let us know and we will resend it. So for those that are unfamiliar with Envoy, for nearly 20 years, Envoy has been on a mission to fix the frustrating, inefficient, and confusing immigration process. Envoy combines expert legal representation with innovative technology to deliver the only platform that makes it seamless for companies to manage, hire, and mobilize a global workforce. Envoy secures work authorization in over 150 countries, has grown 41% year over year, and works with over 1,000 customers. We are particularly proud of our NPS score, which is a testament to the employee experience that we provide. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce the first of two presenters for today's webinar. First, I would like to introduce Karima Hayes, an immigration manager here at Envoy. Karima has extensive U.S. immigration experience as a paralegal and as a case manager, and she has over 3 years of experience within global immigration. Karima currently manages Envoy's large global accounts, addresses case escalations, and serves as a subject matter expert within 50 global destinations. Karima graduated from the University of South Carolina. Next, I would like to welcome Hannah Inchan, Senior Immigration Specialist here at Envoy. Hannah is the primary point of contact for all Europe, Middle East, and Africa matters. She has worked in the immigration field for over 15 years and provides strategic and holistic advice to Envoy's clients and ensures compliance with local immigration rules. Hannah also advises clients on multi-regional moves, and Hannah is a registered solicitor of England and Wales. Hannah and Karima, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Perfect. So we have a great presentation ahead, and just as a little sneak peek for our audience today, so we're just going to briefly touch on the general global mobility landscape, and then Karima and Hannah will discuss some global trends in various parts of the world, starting with the Americas, and then Hannah will discuss EMEA, and then we'll end things with APAC. And then, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we will have a dedicated question and answer session. So again, if there's something you're curious about and within any of the countries that we are discussing today, please type that question in. Additionally, the one final thing, the content in this presentation is not intended as legal advice. For additional information, please reach out to a qualified professional or consult with an Envoy-affiliated attorney. All right, so let's hop into things here, starting with just kind of the global mobility landscape. So in our 2019 Immigration Trends Report, we asked over 400 respondents if they expect their demand for work authorization in jurisdictions out of the U.S., if they would either increase, decrease, or remain the same. And as we take a look at the screen, we see that 48% of respondents said that they expect that demand for global assignments to either somewhat increase or significantly increase. And this is in line with what we've been seeing the last 2 or so years. Additionally, we found that 33% of employers said that differing regulations in destination countries are the largest challenge for them, and that's really kind of why we want to discuss some of these global trends so everyone can know what's going on in different parts of the world. And just as an example of some things that are going on, we see here that Canada is making a big push as a major global tech hub. Obviously, Brexit, it's late August. Brexit, the deadline is October 31st. And then the ongoing protests in Hong Kong are having an impact on business travelers and businesses as a whole. So really, there's several recent or upcoming political developments that could shape the future of global mobility. So I'm going to hand things off to Karima, and Karima is going to discuss some recent trends and developments going on in the Americas.
Sure. Thank you so much, Eric. So we'll go ahead and start with the Americas, specifically the United States. As we've seen in recent news, there has been a significant change in U.S. immigration policy within the past couple of years under the current administration. So Envoy, along with our partner law firm Global Immigration Associates, has recently released an immigration trends report that has uncovered quite a few statistics regarding the uptick in scrutiny. So essentially the report confirmed that requests for evidence, or also known as RFE rates, remain high as in comparison to recent years. Another metric that the report indicates is that employers closely monitor approval percentage, which also continues to decline. In addition, the approval percentage of petitions with RFE is also down as well. So the latest data release indicates that USCIS will continue to heavily scrutinize H-1B petitions, and the scrutiny is applied to every company, so it's not particular to certain sorts of companies.
Mm-hmm. And just quickly want to jump in real quick. So if anyone's curious about webinars specifically focused on U.S. policy and recent trends, you can head to our website. That's resources.envoyglobal.com to find a recent webinar we did that discussed it was a mid-year state of immigration, and it's solely focused on recent USCIS policy updates and trends. Additionally, we are going to be holding a Q3 policy update at the end of September. So again, if you're interested in that, please either watch or sign up for that future webinar. So, Karima, what can you tell us about Canada?
Sure. So as the other headline indicated quickly, Canada is quickly becoming a global hub for tech talent, just given their immigration-friendly policies aimed at mitigating talent shortages. So as our immigration trends report found, U.S. employers are saying that they're increasing their presence in the country as Canada is welcoming foreign talent in large numbers. So we're seeing a high increase in global tech companies expanding their talent footprint in Canada, and U.S. companies are beginning to look at Canada in greater numbers. Canadian companies also heavily rely on temporary foreign work permits to bring talent into Canada. So Canada's immigration processes allow for companies to hire individuals under certain categories as quickly as within a number of weeks.
And it would be on this slide here, so like global skills strategy, global talent stream, and global parking?
Yep, definitely. So a few of the visa processes include those that are listed here. So the processing times for these vary. However, they're typically more expedited than other countries, such as the U.S., so that's why they're aiming for those. But the global skills strategy category is processed generally within about 2 weeks, but there is a new biometrics requirement, which should be confirmed by your licensed practitioner if that should be required. But this is generally an expedited processing time. Alternatively, the global talent stream application also takes about 10 days from processing, but again, it does have that biometrics requirement as well to be confirmed by your licensed practitioner. So in addition, just recently, Canada also updated its global talent occupation list for those individuals applying for the global talent stream. So now it's going to include new programmer and technician-focused occupations.
Interesting. And then to your point, Karima, also in our trends report, we found that 63% of employers are increasing their presence in Canada, and that encompasses companies they are sending more people to and hiring more foreign nationals in Canada, just 35%. 13% are only sending more people to Canada, and then 15% are only hiring more foreign nationals in Canada. Additionally, if you are interested in Canadian-specific policies, we hosted a webinar with Karima and Hannah's colleague, Marina Falkina. So there's a link to watch that recording when you receive this slide deck tomorrow afternoon. So then moving to a little bit down south, we have Mexico. So what are some recent trends and developments in Mexico?
Sure. So Mexico has experienced governmental changes as of 2019 with a new administration, which has in turn impacted immigration policies. In 2019, while Mexico remains to have a pretty streamlined work permit and permanent residency process, there has been an uptick in processing times for certain applications, such as their temporary residence card, which is their standard work permit, renewals and exchanges, such as change of employers, essentially. So we've seen that the backlog has actually been up to about 2 months or more for certain processes. So it's significantly impacted companies' timelines and in terms of sending employees right away, as previously done. So the National Institute of Migration, NIM, has also released new requirements for visa applications and employers, becoming a bit more stringent regarding employer registration prior to accepting and processing applications. Whether they be new applications or renewals, this registration needs to be completed. The NIM is also planning on making staffing reductions, which may continue to delay processing times until further notice. So again, this can significantly impact employers' timelines, and therefore it's suggested just to keep these delays in mind in terms of planning when sending foreigners to Mexico.
Interesting. Great. And then the final country we're going to discuss in the Americas is Panama.
Sure. So Panama has also structurally changed their immigration laws this year, including implementing a new short-term visa for U.S. nationals. So this short-term visa was just recently released as of mid-July, available now at the immigration office in Panama. So while this process, I think, overall takes about 2 to 3 months, the common practice is that the applicant can actually stay in Panama during the process and may even be able to commence employment during this time, provided that their activities fall under this category. Once the visa application is filed, the immigration office grants what's called an in-process carnet, and this carnet allows a U.S. national to stay legally in Panama during the approval and the entire visa process. This process also allows for multiple entries, so it is highly sought after. We've seen an increase in Panama travel this summer, so we have seen a few initiations of those too. We've also seen extended durations of business visas available for other certain nationals too, within Panama's immigration laws.
Interesting. So the new short-term visa is a new option that just came out?
Yes, just in mid-July.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Great. So thanks, Karima, for going over the Americas.
Sure.
Now I'm going to turn things over to Hannah to discuss EMEA, so it's Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So Hannah, what can you tell us about some recent trends and developments in EMEA?
Thanks, Eric. There's been a lot of immigration movement in the EMEA region in the last 12 months. And what we're going to do is we're going to provide a snapshot of some of these changes. So looking at EMEA and primarily Europe, there's been a requirement to file a posted workers notification under an EU directive. This directive has been in place for a number of years, but still we're seeing many countries are still in the process of implementing that requirement. France was one of the first countries to implement the directive when it first came out, but it has recently announced changes to include information such as the tax number of the French company, where the posted worker will be working. So a lot of the information that the French authorities now require has never been required before. So even though some countries have implemented the directive, we are seeing a lot of changes happening there. But other countries are still in the process of trying to implement this directive. If we move over to the UK, there's, as everyone is probably aware, Brexit is looming. We've got the recent appointment of Boris Johnson as the UK's new Prime Minister. We are expecting the UK to leave the European Union on the 31st of October of this year without a deal. It's going to be hard. It's hard to visualize the UK entering into a deal with only a couple of months to go before the deadline. Although there has been indication from members of parliament who are opposed to Brexit that they will try to prevent the UK from leaving the European Union without a deal. Although how successful they will be, everyone's very, very unsure of that. So when the UK does leave the EU, what does that mean for EU nationals who are residing and working in the UK? If we do leave the EU on the 31st of October, the process will be the same for EU nationals, regardless of whether we have a deal with the EU or not. The only difference will be the deadlines that will be imposed. All EU nationals residing in the UK, as of the date the UK leaves the EU, must apply for an EU residence card. They will be granted either a temporary residence card if they haven't met the minimum residence requirements, or if they have, which means that they've lived in the UK and have enjoyed free movement of rights in the UK for over 5 years, they would then be granted settled status when they make the application. If the UK leaves the EU without a deal, then the application deadline will be the 31st of December 2020. Although the EU national must submit evidence that they were living and enjoying free movement rights in the UK before the 31st of October 2019. If the UK leaves the EU with a deal, then that deadline is extended to the 30th of June 2021. So those are the two main impacts of whether we have a deal or not with the EU when we leave the EU. Although Brexit is going to have a huge impact on immigration and EU nationals, the UK are very, very conscious that they do want to retain highly qualified professionals. And so in that vein, the UK have announced other immigration routes, particularly in the fields of science, technology, engineering and maths. That's to attract highly qualified, highly professional individuals to come to the UK and make important contributions to the UK's leading science and research sectors, significantly enhancing the intellectual knowledge base of the UK. So our new Prime Minister recently announced the introduction of what's called the Global Talent Visa. This will provide eligible foreign nationals with a 3-year visa, which could lead to permanent residence in the UK. There will be no minimum salary requirement, unlike many of the other routes that are available at the moment. And the individual does not need to have secured a job before arriving in the UK. At the moment, we don't have any further information because this was announced only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure the UK government also don't have details on this, but we do expect to receive some further information on how they're going to implement this, how they're going to implement the requirements, what processes they're going to use, and also create the systems that are required to implement the new permit. So that's pretty much it for the UK for now, but we will be providing you with further updates as and when Brexit happens. So I just move further onto Europe. We're going to Germany. Germany is another country which has been looking to try and attract foreign nationals who are qualified and who are experienced, because they've noticed that they have a lack of experienced professionals coming or going to Germany. So earlier this year, Germany proposed a bill to help simplify some of the aspects of German immigration process. These measures include granting work permits to foreign nationals who have non-academic training qualifications. So, for example, nurses. They've made the process easier for nurses to go and work in Germany. A simpler and easier process to obtain a qualification equivalency certificate from the German qualifications boards, because at present the process requires a foreign national to have their qualification compared to a German qualification. And they'll be granted a certificate confirming that their qualification in fact meets the German requirements, and that process is very cumbersome, and so the authorities are looking to simplify this and making it a lot easier for applicants to apply for a work permit. They've also relaxing the resident labour market testing requirement. Because at present some permits do require that labour market test, so hopefully that will make the process faster for applicants. And in addition to that, they're also creating a fast-track process for certain qualified workers. So hopefully the process for German work permit will be easier, simpler, and more accessible to foreign nationals. We're going to hop back across the pond over to Ireland, where earlier this year, the Irish authorities are looking at a different route to attract highly qualified or highly skilled individuals, because the Irish authorities have previously had slightly more cumbersome requirements for dependents accompanying highly skilled individuals into Ireland, which meant that they took away the attraction from the individual to come to Ireland. It's what we've seen is a lot of assignees and employees, they like to bring their spouse, their partner, their children to work with them if they're going on assignment or if they're relocating for a number of years. So the Irish authorities have noticed this, and what they've done, what they've announced earlier this year, is that they've announced they are relaxing their rules on dependents accompanying holders of critical skill employment permit holders. They haven't relaxed the rules for everybody, but this is a key genre of people that professionals that they are looking to attract. So the measures they've put in place include the introduction of a dependent permit for unmarried partners, both same-sex and heterosexual partners, and also granting spouses of critical skills employment permit holders free access to the Irish labour market. So now spouses do not need to obtain a work permit in their own right if they wanted to work in Ireland. We're going to move over more to the Middle East next, to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia have historically had a very restrictive approach to immigration, but they're starting to open up the labour market a little bit more. So, and what they've done is they've announced that they're taking away the requirement to conduct a resident labour market, and that means having to advertise jobs on the local Takat portal. So this will reduce the time frame required to obtain a block visa, which is effectively the work permit. The Saudi authorities have also historically had a requirement whereby Saudi companies need to have or retain a certain number of Saudi employees or Saudi nationals in a workplace. But this rule has actually been relaxed a little bit. in 2019, and so they've introduced a new calculation system which categorizes certain companies as high green or a platinum category. And if you're categorized either high green or platinum, if that company had a Saudi national leave the company, instead of having the Saudi national affect their ratio of Saudi nationals versus non-Saudi nationals, the company can request their calibration or their ratio to be recalculated, so that wouldn't negatively affect their ratios. So, for example, if a Saudi company had 3 employees, 2 of which were Saudi nationals and 1 of which was a non-Saudi national, if that Saudi national left the company, that they could apply for the recalculation to stay within their Saudization ratio. And finally, there was a recently announced a new Iqama or a new residence permit, which would grant highly skilled professionals, particularly in the field of science, or who owned a company in Saudi Arabia. This new permit would allow the holder additional rights. For example, one that's hindered a lot of employees or foreign nationals working in Saudi Arabia is just the freedom to leave and to enter Saudi Arabia without prior permission from their sponsor. As you know, previously, if a foreign national wanted to leave Saudi Arabia, they would have to get permission from their HR, and then they'd be able to leave. Under this new permit, the permit holder could come and go from Saudi Arabia, provided their permit is still valid. They don't need permission from their HR to do that, which allows them further free movement. So that's pretty much it. That's a very sort of quick snapshot of the EMEA region. So I'll hand you back over to Eric and Karima.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was a great overview. So I'm going to turn things back over to Karima, and she's going to discuss some the APAC, Asia Pacific region. So Karima, I'm going to start with Hong Kong, which obviously has been in the news for the last month or so.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us, I guess, first, like Hong Kong's recent trends, and then the ongoing protests and whatnot?
Sure. So for decades, Hong Kong has been sort of a magnet for migrants with its immigration-friendly policies. Some few recent updates we've seen has been the implementation of dependent visas for same-sex partners, similar to the number of European countries that Hannah just recently mentioned. The ruling clears the way for partners to qualify for visas, making Hong Kong one of the first locations in Asia to recognize same-sex marriage for immigration purposes, which previously has always been kind of an issue when we're processing those types of applications. In addition, there's also been an update to implement new smart identity cards that's been implemented. This includes a chip technology to enhance personal data protection, which has been, as we've seen recently, has been huge across countries in terms of protecting data and keeping applicants' information stored carefully. The work permit process for Hong Kong is fairly streamlined, so we haven't seen a significant change to that. But just moving on to the next slide, as you may have heard, there has been a number of protests in recent news. Just a bit of background, the 2009 Hong Kong anti-extradition bill protests are a series of demonstrations in Hong Kong that started in around March and have continued. And it's against the extradition bill proposed by the government. And honestly, while we've seen protests that have impacted travel delays in and out of Hong Kong, including travel advisories from the US and other countries, I'm surprised to see that processing times with the immigration department haven't really been affected by the current unrest within the country. However, given the current climate, employers and foreign nationals in Hong Kong should keep themselves apprised of the latest updates in the event of future immigration impacts, which I assume will happen fairly shortly. I mean.
Great. Thanks for that recap on Hong Kong. Obviously, there's a lot of news coming out of there. So then moving to, I guess, mainland China, what can you tell us about China?
Sure. So China historically has had a stringent immigration policy. However, it recently announced new immigration policy aims to encourage economic development, which includes issuing longer visa validities, providing permanent residency to a more extensive group of applicants and individuals, along with streamlining the overall immigration process. This includes work permits, residence permits, securing passports, and just that standard travel permits to China. In terms of extended visa validity, the extension will be applicable not only to high-level executives, but also to foreign experts, scholars, and so forth for lengthier multiple entry visas. As for the work permit process, some applicants are supposed to apply for this application called Notification for Work Permit, also known as an NWP. But under the new measures, the applicant will now be able to apply for the work residence permit at the Exit Entry Bureau in China, which greatly simplifies the process for the individual and the company in terms of planning. China has also begun using machine-readable residence permits and visas similar to other countries. So the design features an adjusted layout, machine-readable code, and while the new foreigner visa and residence permit cards will also feature a colored profile of the holder too.
Gotcha. And next we have Taiwan. So what are some recent trends in Taiwan?
Sure. So similarly to Hong Kong, Taiwan is another country that's leaning towards a more progressive stance. Recently, as of May 2019, Taiwan has also legalized same-sex marriage, which gives same-sex couples the right to marry under the Constitution of Republic in China. So we are seeing that trend in certain countries, and Taiwan definitely followed suit. We've also seen new guidelines for family alien residence certificates that, again, streamlines the process for those individuals.
Gotcha. We got a couple more countries here. Second to last is Russia. Kind of curious about Russia. I feel like what are their policies like?
Yeah, so moving on to Russia, Russia has alternatively moved towards a more protectionist approach. So recently, authorities have issued a new requirement for Russian entities to be registered with the immigration authorities, which wasn't previously required in order to complete certain visa applications, such as a standard business visitor application. This registration has impacted timelines for business travel significantly, as the initial registration may require personal appearance of the general director of the Russian entity to conduct a formal interview with the immigration authorities. While the registration is mandatory, it can be done simultaneously when applying for the letter of invitation for that certain visa application process for a certain individual.
Interesting. And then the final country we're going to discuss, and I feel like Australia, well, it is Australia.
Yeah.
I feel like there's been some recent news coming out of Australia regarding its immigration policies and whatnot. So what can you tell us about current trends in Australia?
Sure. So Australia is another country that's leaning towards a more, I guess, protectionist approach with new caps on immigration and implementing new requirements to its visa immigration program to enhance compliance and integrity measures. This includes lengthier processing times for those sponsors that have been sanctioned for compliance breaches or flagged as having a history of non-compliance. However, while the application processes have not become simpler in the new initiatives, Australia has recently announced this month that they would implement new measures to bring high-skilled migrants to the country, including the implementation of new programs such as the Global Talent Employer Sponsored Program, which will allow more permanent, initially targeting established companies and startups to benefit from a simplified application process. However, employers must show that they can't fill these positions.
And then what can you tell us about skilled worker visa? here in Australia?
Yeah, a new skilled worker visa is also being introduced to steer migrants away from Australia's largest cities by requiring residents outside of their largest cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, as a condition for securing permanent residency. So we found that about 23,000 visas are available, and workers will be given priority processing and access to a larger pool of jobs under this route. We've also seen some, including medical visas for doctors under this category. However, if people breach the conditions of their visas by relocating to the cities, they'll ultimately become ineligible for permanent residency and risk cancellation and removal from Australia.
Gotcha. And that's going, so it's about 1:40. That's going to end the main presentation. Karima and Hannah, thank you so much for providing overviews of the various countries around the world. It's always interesting to see how, I guess, countries are approaching immigration and whatnot. So again, I'd like to open up the floor for questions. If you have questions, please type them in, and Hannah or Karima will address it. So as we wait for some more questions to roll in, I just want to highlight a couple more webinars we have coming up. So later this week, there's a rerun of the ABCs of Immigration. And then on September 10th, top 10 perks for foreign nationals in 2019. So when you receive the slide deck, you'll be able to click these links and register. Additionally, be sure to subscribe to our mailing list, as you'll receive the latest webinar and content downloads and invites from us. And finally, we have SHRM and HRCI continuing education credits. So if you want to take a moment to copy these down, as a reminder, they will also be sent in tomorrow's follow-up email. So I guess, Hannah, we're in late August, and Brexit is scheduled for October 31st. In your mind, what are some important dates, moments, things that we should be on the lookout for between now and October 31st?
Well, what we should be looking out for is any updates, any news. We will be providing any news as and when we receive them from the authorities. We're expecting to hear with regards to probably in the final week running up to October the 31st as to whether a deal is expected. At the moment, it is not. So what we would recommend clients do is to check in with your EU nationals. If you do employ EU nationals in the UK, then I would ask them for a copy of their residence permit if they've submitted one. And also, if they haven't, I would ask them to prepare an application to be submitted for their residence permits, because as of 31st of October, they would need to have documentation ready for either submitting the application or have it in place.
Gotcha. Thank you. Let's see here. Just waiting for a couple more questions to roll in. Let's see. Karima, what, in your mind, what I guess what would be the best way to follow some of the recent news out of Hong Kong? What are sources, daily updates, I guess?
Yeah. So in terms of travel, keep yourself apprised of the travel advisories going on, just for impacting just entry in and out of Hong Kong. But in terms of application processes, definitely keep in touch with your immigration provider. Again, we haven't seen any significant impact in the processing time, so I'm not sure if that's going to change. I'm sure it will, but I think in terms of just intermittent travel is probably the main focus right now.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you. And I think that's going to, we have about 2 minutes. So I think it's going to wrap things up for question and answers today. So again, this webinar, the recording will be sent out to everyone currently in attendance tomorrow afternoon. So you'll be able to download the recording or listen to the recording, and you'll also be able to download and view the slide deck. Karima and Hannah, thank you so much for presenting this afternoon and providing overviews of countries and different regions around the world. And to all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great Tuesday, have a great rest of your week, and if you're in the U.S., have a great extended weekend.